Hey everyone, this is Nick from History Publishing Company. So today I just want to talk about this different approach to studying the Civil War. Because see, a lot of historians, when they study these kind of events, will pick through their source material and try to weed out all the bias and all the prejudice that's embedded in there, in order to come to a concrete vision of what actually happened, the actual times and dates and places that comprise the narrative stream of history. This is a kind of different approach from that. In our story, the biases and the prejudices and the fantasies of these authors play as big of a role in the story as the events which took place. Obviously, on one level, you need to pick out the bias in order to form a coherent, rational story of what happened, but that story is incomplete if you leave all the emotion out afterwards. Just think about your experience of the events of our time. I mean, it's a totally subjective thing. It's comprised of fantasies and expectations and biases. So when you read these newspaper articles from the Civil War and you focus on these subjective phenomena, it gives you a much better picture of what it was actually like to live through these events and what it really felt like. Alright, let me just show you exactly what I mean when I say that a newspaper article can convey the feeling of a population. Okay, this is how the New York Times reported the secession of South Carolina.
The secession movement. As this step was universally anticipated, it will create no special uneasiness. It does not change the relations of South Carolina to the Union in the slightest degree, though it will very possibly be followed by acts which will have that effect.
Alright, so it's kind of playing it cool, keeping it level-headed, but there's also this implicit knowledge that maybe this actually is a bigger deal than we're letting on. Okay, now this is how the Charleston Mercury reported it.
The Union is dissolved!
Okay, so there's a bit more to the article than that, but I think the headline suffices to show this contrast between the calmness of the New York Times and the excitement of the Mercury. And this bombastic tone is kind of a feature of the Mercury throughout the war. For instance, this is what they reported after their victory, the Confederate victory at the Second Battle of Bull Run.
It is easy to see that the struggle of Saturday was indeed for us signal victory. Already the sounds of wailing and lamentation come echoing from the north. Thousands upon thousands of the invading host have gone down before the valor of our veteran troops. The Third Grand Army, which has been marshaled upon Virginia soil for the subjugation of that noble state, is beaten and has fled in utter rout. Maryland, from her eastern shore to the Blue Ridge, is throbbing with the hope of an early deliverance, and sits uneasy in her chains, while Washington, the center of official falsehood and corruption, is quaking at the approach of the very army that the Yankee leaders were lately so confident of crushing and driving to the wall. Our victorious troops in Virginia, reduced though they may be in numbers, and shattered in organization, must be led promptly into Maryland, before the enemy can rally the masses of recruits whom he is rapidly and steadily gathering together. When the government of the North shall have fled into Pennsylvania, when the public buildings in Washington shall have been razed to the ground so as to forbid the hope of their ever again becoming the nest of Yankee despotism, then, at last, may we expect to see the hope of success vanish from the northern mind, and reap the fruit of our bloody and long-continued trials.
So you can really feel the emotion and the virulence coming off that bombastic Mercury piece, but also a bit of anti-Yankee sentiment when they're talking about burning Washington to the ground. It's obvious that the South has a cultural problem with the North. This is also expressed a bit earlier in the war when when the North took Fort Donelson. This is what the Mercury had to say about that.
The men whom they have to face, they being, of course, the Confederate defenders of Fort Donelson, by the way. The men who they have to face are not the dastard Yankees who fled in terror from the plains of Manassas. The assailants of Fort Donelson are made of sterner stuff. They are the hardy frontiersmen of the Northwest, who are not wont to flinch in the day of danger. To drive back such men at the point of the bayonet is a task worthy of the prowess of our brave volunteers.
So here, even though they're being defeated, since they're being defeated by Northwesterners, they kind of use that as a stab against the Northeastern Yankees, who they really have a cultural problem with. But that cultural tension kind of goes both ways. So for instance, here's something that the New York Times wrote, to switch the focus to them for a moment. Here's something they wrote during the siege of Fredericksburg.
Our shot and shell have riddled a great many of the houses in town, and most of the churches from foundation to steeple have been accidentally perforated by the storm of missiles which were sent into the town. As the monuments and representatives of a priesthood and a people thoroughly baptized in treason, they deserve no exemption from the common doom. But being larger than any other buildings and very prominently in the range of our fire, they naturally receive their full share of the iron storm.
So here the New York Times is participating in this total war mentality, wherein every Southerner is associated with treachery. Even their priesthood and their churches are the priesthood and the churches of traitors. And more than that even, they tend to identify the South with a kind of barbarism or savagery, in the sense that they don't even fight honorably. They don't even fight according to the agreed upon rules of combat. So this is the New York Times reporting Confederate treachery at the Battle of Antietam. As the corps advanced to the woods across the plowed field, the rebels unfurled the stars and stripes, and waving them, cried out, "What the hell are you doing? Don't fire upon your friends!" Our troops, deceived by this ruse, ceased firing, when the rebels opened fire, then a murderous volley of musketry and crossfire, and created a temporary panic. They being the Union Army, rallied and drove the rebels back, but it was done at a great sacrifice of life. In any military conflict, both sides will try and portray the other side as being the more disreputable party. But aside from just being more dishonorable, this really goes with the northern conception of the South as kind of more savage or more uncivilized. I mean, that's what they got out of having to constantly endure these guerrilla tactics from the South. But that's about it for me today. That's all that I have for this video. I focused mostly on the cultural antipathy between the North and the South that you can see in these articles. But if you go through the book yourself, you'll see there's a ton of connections which I wish I could have made, but I just didn't have enough time to go into them. Again, the name of the book is The Words of War by Don Bracken, and I'll put a link to order it in the low bar. And if you order from that link, then you'll get an autographed copy. So that's great. The book is really excellent. I mean, composed almost entirely of primary source documents. Every article's quote that I read, it comes from this book. Almost all the pictures I used as well come from this book. It covers around 15 battles and some other events throughout the Civil War. And I mean, this is real history, guys. This is battlefield reporting with the immediacy that entails, with the bias that entails, and even the prejudices. So like and favorite this video if you learned something. I really hope you did. And put your thoughts in the comment section. Other than that, I'll see you next time. This is Nick from History Publishing Company, signing out.